So in this next lesson, we're going to be taking a look at the sales order allocation routines within X3. Um, uh, the allocations, they're a necessary step in the order fulfillment process. And basically, it's the step that we go through to reserve available inventories against our sales orders, and really also against our work orders also. But in terms of this discussion, we're going to be focusing only on the sales orders. So there's many different ways to approach your allocations in the system, and there's many different parameters that govern their respective behavior. So we're going to try to give you a good overview of those. So let's start off by taking a look at some of the allocation routines that we can run directly on the sales order. So to start, I'm going to come under Sales, Orders, and Orders. And I'll go into my full entry transaction. Okay, so here's our sales order, and you can see at present the allocation status on the order is not allocated. So one of the most basic ways by which to perform an allocation is to come over and simply click on the allocation button here. Okay. So this will tunnel us to a menu, and from this menu here we can see that again the inventory is not allocated, and over here we have an allocation type set to global, meaning that when we perform this allocation, it's basically just going to reserve the necessary number of units against the order, not giving any specification relative to the locations or lots from which the goods are going to be sourced. So this allocation type right here of global, let me actually take a step back here. You can actually flip that back here on the delivery tab. I could come in here, toggle this over to detailed, go ahead and do a save. Okay, then when I come back into my allocation button here, I can see now my allocation type is set up to detailed. Okay, providing us that with kind of a finer level of detail on the allocation. Down here under our allocation parameters, we have a setting here to give priority to shortages. The shortage concept within X3, what that's in relationship to is you can set up the system for shortages or not. And the way that the shortage manifests itself is when you're in the system and you perform an allocation attempt against an order and you have insufficient inventory to fill the order, you can create a shortage record in X3. And those shortages can be useful insofar as you can, run different types of inquiries to show you all the shortages that are outstanding, so you know what products you need to target in terms of fulfillment. In addition to that, you can give priority to shortages, meaning that when you come along and do subsequent allocation attempts, X3 will seek to allocate the shortages before it seeks to allocate other line items on your order. Then in addition to that, from a shortage perspective, there's also a auto fulfillment of the shortages. So that is to say, when you do a subsequent inventory receipt to bring inventory on hand, you can set up X3 to automatically allocate that received inventory against your orders without any additional intervention. Okay, and we'll take a look at some of those parameters as we go along. Over here we can do a setting if we wish to permit for the partial allocation. Okay, so maybe this order here is for 100 units. Maybe we don't have 100 on hand. Maybe we have 75, but we want to go ahead and allocate those 75 units against the order. We can go ahead and set that. We have this concept of a customer reservation. So basically that's putting goods on layaway, let's say, for a particular customer. So when we run our allocations, if we did have any goods on reservation for the customer, it would seek to consume those reservations when we do it. Then we also have this generate shortages record. So again, if I want the system to generate those shortages for me so I can inquire on them. So I'm going to come over and do an allocation. And I'm going to get a log file here, and it gives me my order number, the product. Then down in this section here, you can see that I allocated 100 units of the product, and I have a rejection of 0 units. Okay, so in the event that I had a shortage situation, I would have a rejected quantity indicator over here, but it would tell me the number of units that it did allocate. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close that up. And what we should see now is back here on the Management tab, in my allocation status, I have a nice full allocation set on the order. Now, if I ran into a situation where I wanted to deallocate the order, maybe a more higher priority order came along that needed the same inventory, I could go ahead and deallocate. So to do so, I could come back over here, click on the allocation button once again, and come to this option here for automatic deallocation. And that's going to go ahead and give me a negative 100 in my allocation quantity. So now we should be able to see back here, I have a not allocated status. So that's kind of one of the more basic ways to perform an allocation on an order. Another way in which we can do an allocation on the order is I can come over to my Lines tab. Then here on my Lines tab, I'm going to come to the Action button that leads the line. Then in here, there's an option here for a manual allocation. I'm going to go ahead and choose the manual allocation. I'm going to tunnel me over to this menu. So in here I can see what my requirement is. Then over here in the left list, I'm going to get a register of all the various inventory lots that I have out there. Well, in this case, this product isn't lot controlled, so you can see how my lot and sublot fields are blank. But I do location control this good, so I can see that I have 5,000 units in this QUA01 location that has a QC status of A. So I can come in here and click on that box. That will load in my allocated 100 units into the grid over here. Then I can go ahead and do a save. Okay, and once again, I have an allocated order. And if I wanted to go ahead and deallocate, once again, I could come here, click on my allocation button, and do my automatic deallocation, and that will remove out the allocation. Okay, so those are two common ways in which we can perform an allocation directly on a sales order. Now, in terms of some of the alternative methods that we have, let me go ahead and close page out of here. And we're going to come under our sales menu, then down to allocations. Okay, so in here, let me go ahead and start off by taking a look at this automatic allocations function, because this is one of the more popular ways through which your allocations can be performed. This automatic allocations, this could be set up as a batch job in your system, so it could be set up to be something that runs every hour. You could run it 3 times a day, whatever the appropriate frequency is for you. On this automatic allocations routine, basically this is a mechanism that allows you to come in. We can specify the company and the warehousing site, against which we want the allocations to be performed. We can come in here and specify, we want to allocate all open sales order lines that are scheduled to ship through a certain cutoff date. And, X3 basically is going to go out and seek to perform allocations wholesale across all those respective sales orders. So it's a very efficient process. It kind of saves you the exercise of having to manually go in and allocate on a one-by-one basis. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about these parameters. We can allow for X3 to do a partial allocation if we don't have, all the inventory available. The consumption of the customer reservations is there once again. We talked about the ability to generate shortages and giving priority to those shortages. In terms of our shipment cutoff that we specify up here, if we also want to take into account manufacturing lead times, and preparation lead times, we can go ahead and set those flags. These are both lead time considerations that we establish on the product site. Down here in our starting and ending range, in terms of the delivery priority, some organizations will say, maybe on my first pass, I just want to go ahead and run it for all my critical orders, or maybe do a first pass just doing orders that are both urgent through critical. Okay, so we go ahead and give priority to those orders. Then we could come back here and subsequently do another pass, just allocating the normal orders. Okay, so that's kind of how you really leverage that delivery priority to your advantage. In here we could filter on sales order numbers, filter on customers, filter on products. Down in this extra criteria section is very nice insofar as it enables you to allocate on a variety of different fields across the sales order in the sales order line records here. Okay, so again, very flexible. Let's come over here and click on OK. And this in part will go ahead and generate a log file for us. Okay, indicating to us all our parameters. Then here we have a listing. There's your sales order number, the customer. Here's the product that was allocated. Then in this section here we can see, this is a good example here of the shortage. 0 units were allocated, 1 was rejected, and down on this line right here you can see how we have a shortage of 1 that was generated. Okay. If everything works out right, we have a nice clean full allocation here with no rejected quantities. Okay. So that's what we call our automatic allocations. Now to that effect, we also have an automatic deallocation that follows kind of that same batching principle there. So again, under allocations, I can come to deallocations. And once again, I specify my company record, specify my warehousing site, my ship date cutoff, and many of these other parameters are similar to what we saw on the other automatic allocation. I'm going to come in here and do an OK. And this will give me a register of all the sales orders that I've now deallocated. Okay. Close out of here. So the next thing to take a look at also under the allocation menu is this customer reservations. So in here I can come in and specify my company. I can specify the customer and the address that I want to do the reservation for. You can come in, you specify the product, you can specify the date through which you're going to do the reservation, the warehouse from which the goods should be reserved, and the number of units that you're reserving. And when you create this customer reservation record, it does a global allocation. So you can't specify a particular lot or out of a particular location, but you can reserve a certain number of units. Okay, so I could reserve, I could do multiple reservations in here across many different products, out of different warehouses, different quantities. Okay, just load it in like that. We'll come over and click on our save record. Okay, so that gives you some visibility there. Okay, so next let's go ahead and take a look at some of our or before we get to that, I guess when you're ending out of this function, another thing to note is that you can do a purge of reservations that have been previously established that are past their reservation date. So I can come in here, if I want to purge the expired allocations, I can say yes, then this will go ahead and give me a register of those allocations that I've made and that are no longer in place. Okay. So next, in terms of some of the different inquiries that we have relative to the allocations, if we come down under our inquiries menu, we have an allocation block down here. Let's first take a look under allocations here to the allocations inquiry. In here we can go ahead and specify our warehouse site. You could come over here and filter, over a product or a range of products, over a range of sales orders and requirement dates. Else you can run it wide open. And this will go ahead and give you a register of all the current allocations. So you got the product, its description, the number of units that are allocated, under what basis, if it's a global or a detailed allocation. If it's a detailed allocation, you have visibility to, the lot, QC status, and location of the good. You also have your sales order number that's presented here. Here's the case on this one. This is how the customer reservation presents itself. Okay, so useful for that type of visibility. In addition, we have this allocation shortages inquiry that we can run. And again, we can specify our warehouse site. All the same criteria as before. Come over and do a search. And this will give us visibility to those products. Here's our shortage if it's a global or a detailed shortage. We got the quantity that's short. Okay, you got the requirement date. And here's the respective sales order number that you have the shortage on. So again, it can be a very useful inquiry for both sales personnel as well as personnel in the manufacturing department, because they could work from a list such as this to, give priority to or know, where some of the shortcomings are in the supply. Okay, so again, a couple very useful inquiries there. Next, let's take a look at some of the general parameters that govern the allocation behaviors. So if we come up under our setup menu, let's go down under our inventory block, or excuse me, our stock block, and we're going to come under this stock option right here. Our stock parameter, we can go ahead and pull up our storage site, and we're going to come over to this back order management tab. So here down in the lower left hand corner, we have this auto processing of the shortages. So with that parameter, I made reference to this earlier in our discussion. If that parameter there is set, what that means is if you do have a shortage condition on a sales order or work order, whenever you do a subsequent inventory receipt that can fill out that shortage, X3 will go ahead and automatically do that allocation for you without you having to subsequently do a manual allocation or run a batch job to pick it up. It'll just do it automatically for you. Okay, so that's one important parameter. In addition, let's go take a look at some of our general parameters that govern our allocation behavior. So again, we're going to come under Setup, General Parameters, then over here to Parameter Values. In here on our parameter value, we're going to come under Then, and we'll go ahead and take a look at these parameters at the folder level. Okay, we have our order allocation rules here, the SAL group. Click on the Action button and go into Detail. Okay, so these are allocations on our sales order. So the first one here for our allocation type. So this is the indicator when we are putting a sales order into the system, if we want our allocation type to be default to global or detailed. This is where we can go ahead and set that default. It can always be overridden on an order by order basis, but that's what the default behavior is going to be. This second parameter here, the initial quantity to allocate to the sales order, that can either be set to yes or no. Now, if that's set to yes, that is kind of a mechanism that will basically, when you're going through and you're creating a sales order, that's going to populate the to allocate field automatically with the order amount. So upon clicking on the creation button, X3 is automatically going to do an allocation attempt for you. Okay, that's a kind of an initial allocation to the order. So one recommendation might be is if your your order turnaround is very fast. Like, if 95% of your orders are same day shipment, the order goes in today, gets shipped out by the end of that day, it probably would make sense for you to set this parameter to yes, because you want the customer service team to automatically be allocating those orders such that you can create the delivery records and fulfill the orders right away, as opposed to having to wait 30 minutes for a batch routine to run to do the allocation for you. This reinstatement of the order allocations, again, that's another yes no setting there. Now what that's in reference to is, in the event that we had, say, like a delivery record that was created against a sales order, the way that works in X3 is your allocation, when you create that delivery, the allocation will get cleared off of the sales order and present itself on the delivery record. If you go ahead and subsequently delete that delivery, this parameter here indicates as to whether or not that allocation should be transferred back to the sales order. If it's set to yes, the allocation will be transferred back to the sales order. If it's set to no, you'll have to go ahead and reallocate the sales order manually or through your batch jobs. This next setting right here, the consumption of customer reservations. So again, this is either on request yes or no. So this is in reference to, again, if we do customer reservations, we lay away goods for our clients. When we do our allocations, if we want those reservations to be consumed automatically, we can set it to yes. If we want to be prompted, we can set it to on request. Okay, and if we just want to manually purge them out, we can set this to no. Okay, so those are some of the important parameters through the VEN chapter under the sales group. Now, in addition to that, if we come under our STO inventory parameter group, in here on our folder level, we're going to come into the miscellaneous group here, and on our action button, go into the detail. And in here, a important setting here for the generation of the shortages. Okay, again, this can either be set to yes or no in here. If it's set to yes, then X3 is going to default to generate those shortage records in the event that you have insufficient inventory available to complete your allocation. If you set that to no, then again, it's not going to generate those shortages. Okay, so those are some of the major parameters, kind of on a global folder level there. One last thing that I want to take a look at is the product category record and how that influences allocations. So we can come under our common data and come under products and product categories. So in here on the product category, I want to come over to this issue flow tab. Now in here on the issue flow, what you're going to see is we have allocation rules, we have global allocation rules, and we have issue rules. Okay, maybe we start off with discussing the global allocations, kind of the simplest in nature here. So if we have our sales orders set up such that we initially want to do a global allocation, we don't want to specify, at the time of order entry what warehouse location or what lot that order is going to be fulfilled from. We might want to defer that until the time in which the shipment record is generated. If we go about it like that, through these settings right here, we can specify what kind of QC statuses are eligible for global allocation. So in this model, it's only the authorized goods, okay, as opposed to, we're not including goods that are currently under quality control or goods that have been rejected. Okay. Now, these different allocation and issue rules that we have here, we can go ahead and let me do the magnifier here. So this is allocations on sales orders, then on work orders. And in here, you can see the different options from which we can choose. We can there's many different FIFO schemes from which we can choose. First inventory in is the first inventory that goes out. You can do like a generic FIFO, or we can do a FIFO whereby we give certain priorities based upon site or based upon packaging unit. Okay, so there's many different schemes that we can follow here. Let's take a moment and actually tunnel down into the allocation rule. So in here we have our rule, its description. Down here, if under our sequencing of lots, the sequence based, on a by lot basis, first lot in, first lot out. First, this FIFO right here, this is the first lot to expire, should be the first one out. Then we also have a LIFO sequencing that we can do on our allocation if the last goods that come in are the first ones that we want to send out. Over here also, if we want to set up restrictions such that only a single lot can be allocated on a given sales order line. If we want to do a complete pack out on our allocation, we can't do we can't, allocate a broken carton. We have a setting for that. Down here in our grid here, we have filters. So based upon the quality control status, what we permit from an allocation perspective. Okay. In here we have different location filters that we can set. So you can actually we can go through and take a look at some of the more advanced rules that we have set up in here, but it's commonplace for many organizations to have multiple locations associated with a product. So you might have a general stocking location, then you also have a primary picking bin for the good. So through these settings right here, we can stack multiple rows in here whereby we can say, okay, go to the primary location for the product, say it's pick bin, look for the goods there first, then in the event that they're not there, go ahead and look in the secondary location, which is the general storage area. Okay. Settings like this can kind of make things more efficient from an allocation and a subsequent picking perspective. Okay. Then over here we have settings in here if we want to do any types of filtering based upon the units of measure, the unit of measure through which the order was placed, the stocking unit measure, or any of the packaging units of measure. So again, there's a lot of good documentation, and depending upon how fancy or how sophisticated you are in your warehouse, you can use these allocation rules to your advantage to kind of get your warehouse personnel kind of picking in the most effective way. Okay, so let me go ahead and close out of here. So in this case, that FIFO is again on the sales order allocations, the work order allocations. Then in terms of issuing the inventory, that's the same basis upon which inventory is allocated onto our shipping records and also in our production tracking records against our work order. Okay, so that's kind of the nature of the allocations within the X3. From the context, on the sales side, we've taken a look at the reservation functionality, some of the good inquiries that we have out there to show us our allocations and our shortages, as well as some of the general parameters that we have that governs these behaviors. Okay, so that is it for the allocation. So next we're going to be picking up with our next step in the order fulfillment cycle, which is going to be in relationship to the picking and the deliveries.